My name is Joe Talaugon, and I published my first book. It's called Mestizo Through My Eyes. I grew up here in Guadalupe. It's a little farming town with many different nationalities of people that settled here, and basically it's a farming community. And we've had so many different periods of time in the history of this town where it changed. We always have to remember that originally the land was Native American Chumash land. That the Chumash people lived throughout the Central Coast. And then when the Europeans came into the area in the 1700s, they created businesses, mainly grazing land for cattle, dairy farming. And in the early 1920s, Guadalupe became an agricultural community. That's when the people that came here to work in agriculture, whether it was out in the field, in the packing houses, or wherever it might be, it was agriculture until today. And I want to be proud of that. I'm proud of it. And I want the people that live here to realize that we have a history here, and my book is just part of that history. What I was inspired by mostly is that in 1969, my stepfather died in a ranch house fire near the town of Guadalupe here. And all my life when I was growing up as a child, we lived on these farmhouses. And unfortunately, he continued to live out on the farm, and the house caught on fire one night on September 30th, 1969. I was already 39 years old, and it was just an unfortunate incident. It really inspired me or got me emotionally involved to understand his life as an immigrant, Filipino immigrant that came to this country in 1927. So in 1970, I kept thinking about it and wondering, what could I do to help to rid myself of this highly emotional depression because of his death. So I started writing notes and a story about my life growing up with him and my family in this ranch house. Okay, I grew up during the Great Depression here in America during the 1930s. And during that time, my father being an immigrant, and there was a lot of people immigrated to America during that period of time in the 1930s. And the only kind of work that they could find, especially the Filipino immigrants, Mexican immigrants, was to work out in the fields and the farms. And that's a job he ended up getting. So we lived on these vegetable farms here in the local area, and our family grew to 6 children. And my mother and father, we lived in these old farmhouses. I was the oldest of the family, of the children. It wasn't until I was in high school that I started realizing that, there was racism and discrimination against my father and against a lot of people of color. That's when I started thinking about how hard it was as a mestizo or a mixed blood during those times because of the racism. So that also gave me inspiration to write about it and tell about it, talk about what of some of the experiences that I went through as a teenager and as a young man, and that's mainly what the story starts out to be, is my life experiences as a mestizo in this country. I wanted to express the struggles that these people have in life, dealing with identity, dealing with the racism or discrimination or shame or whatever it might be. And the other point I wanted to make to the future generations of Native Americans or indigenous people is that no matter what your bloodline or what your ancestry is, whatever you are today, I think it's important that you learn about your culture, learn about your ancestry, so that you can have a better understanding of your own identity. Who am I? Where did my great ancestors come from? I only had a high school education, and my first notes that I would write were not really excellent English, so I had a hard time expressing myself and writing my notes and try to start my story. So I had a difficult time, but then as I kept writing these short stories and notes about my life and experiences, I talked to my children, my young adult children, that I wanted to publish this book. So they said, well, you should do it. And especially my wife, Margie, she was very encouraging. She always encouraged me to write my story, and she helped me put it together. She was one of the main parts of arranging the structure of the book, the paragraphs and the certain words in the stories. So, but yet never changing the main part of the story. But she helped me very much. Yeah, what I realized in early part of starting to write this book, that I started writing parts of it, emotionally. I'd feel a need to write. Emotionally, I felt that at those times I could express myself the best. Whether I wrote a poem or rather I wrote a piece of prose or part of my story, and I realized that it came from deep down within me as an emotional state of mind. I couldn't just sit down and start writing any time of the day, or it just had, sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and start writing. After I finished the manuscript and we started publishing it, I realized that those emotions and those feelings went away. I don't have those feelings anymore. Maybe it was because I was highly emotionally depressed about my father's death and how they died and the horrible tragedy of it all, and then my mother's part in my life and my own experiences in life that created that emotional feeling to write. But now that I'm older, I probably feel more comfortable with myself and with life. My wife, Margie, and myself, we grew up in this town. We both grew up here. Our families came here and settled here. Her father came from the Philippines, and so did mine. So we grew up here knowing all the families and different nationalities here. So we did a lot of community work, working with the youth, working with elderly. We felt that we always felt that we needed a kind of like a hub or a basis foundation in the town representing the community. So we built the community center. It's called the Guadalupe Cultural Arts and Education Center, which is dedicated to Margie. And this community center will be the place where we embrace all the different cultures. Being a normal person that grew up in this area, and publishing a book about my life and experience as a mestizo, I kind of want, other people, it might inspire them to write their own story, because there are many stories to be told that can be told, and Guadalupe, has many stories. My book is just a small portion of that story or that history. So that's basically what I wanted to say about the book, Mestizo Through My Eyes. That's pretty much it. I don't know. I could have gone into detail about teenage guys, we hung out and got into trouble and stuff, but they can read the book and find out about that.
Yep. All right, cool.